Hey everyone, on my last video I've gotten a bit more views than I was expecting. So I think it's worthwhile to make kind of an introduction video of my car and what it is and what's done to it. More of a formal thing than the one I did last time. So this right here is my, can I do it like Doug DeMuro? This is my C6 Corvette. He never says mine because he never has cars. But yeah, this is my 2012 Grand Sport Centennial Edition. The Centennial Edition was only offered in 2012. It was a package to commemorate Chevrolet's 100 years of producing cars. In 2012, you could not get black. You could only get it in this trim. And it's not black, it's called carbon flash metallic. Since then, General Motors has put this color on a handful of vehicles. You can get it on a 5th gen Camaro, I think, in some spec. They've been using it as accent pieces on the C7 and C8. It's like an accent package you buy, and all your splitters and your, like the wishbone on the C8 will be carbon flash metallic. And then they just brought back this entire color scheme for the C8 anniversary, the 75th anniversary edition on the C8. Down to the matte black stripes and red pinstripes and the red stitching inside and everything like that. It's really cool to see. But this is mine, and I've had this for about 18 months now. This has been kind of the dream spec for me for a while. This is my third vet, and ever since I've been into cars, this, like the C6 Grand Sport, has always stood out to me, and the Z06, of course. When I bought this, I initially wanted the Z06. That was my kind of goal at the time, and these are priced roughly the same. So I kind of started looking at the Grand Sport as well, just because it was also in the same price range, and one catered more towards long-term ownership and daily driving, and the other one catered more towards a summer fun car that's a little less reliable and you don't get the removable top. So I went with this, as I plan to own this for at least 10 years. And I didn't compromise on anything. This is the first car I've just made a checklist and went after whatever I wanted. So before this, I had a 98 C5. That was an automatic, had over 150,000 miles when I bought it. And I mean, that was a great car too, but I bought it because it was cheap. I wanted a manual, but that one was so cheap I couldn't turn it down. Little fact about me: this is the first stick shift car I've ever owned. This is the first stick shift car I learned how to drive. So I learned how to drive it on the way home. It was about an hour and a half commute home when I picked it up. I got 20 minutes of seat time in a buddy's WRX the day that I went and bought this. But other than that, this is it. And it's just been a dream of mine to learn how to do that, and own such an amazing car and do both at the same time has been awesome. I will forever tell people, because every once in a while someone will ask, give me some advice on how to learn how to drive stick. And you always see people tell or suggest to buy a cheap beater to learn how to drive stick. And to me, that is just the stupidest way to waste money, to buy a cheap car that you'll probably have to fix, put tires on, register, and light and all that stuff just to drive it on the road and insure it, just to sell it and lose money on it. I don't know. Just buy the car you want. You learning is not going to do any damage that would ever become noticeable to you, or you're not going to hurt it just by learning. So back to my car. So this is a Centennial Edition Grand Sport, a manual 3LT. It is... from the numbers I've been able to gather, it's one of like 349 in this spec as a manual Grand Sport Centennial Edition. So it's kind of a rare combination. Not that it matters, not that it adds any real value to the car or anything. It's just something Corvette guys do, is they figure out, how can I look at this to make it as rare as possible? Well, mine's the only one made on a Thursday with these floor mats when it was raining. Yeah. But yeah, let's take a look at it. So I bought this, like I said, about 18 months ago. It is filthy because it's been raining the last few days, and I drive it every day. So I bought this, 18 months ago, and I bought it with, I think it had just over 89,000 miles on it. And it now currently has, I'm going to zoom out. Okay. And it currently just has over 103 now, so I'm stacking it on. The first thing that I love about the C6, and obviously way more so with the wide body, but C6 in general just has much more aggressive styling. From far away, the C5 and the C6 look very similar. They share the same body lines in a lot of ways. Like if you drew a silhouette of both, like they're very similar. But this car actually has body lines. The C5, anyone who's owned one or familiar with them, it's all rounded, bubble. It's all just, it looks like a melted bar of soap in a lot of ways. It looks like, I mean, it's a beautiful car in its own way for its time. But after and at the time when I had mine, that was one of my favorite looking cars ever. But as time went on, it's raining. I hope this isn't coming through too much. As time went on, owning that car, I started to like it less and less and less, just because it didn't have this defined shape to it necessarily. This car, on the other hand, has sharp edges everywhere, curvy lines where it needs to. To me, it is the perfect mix of old school styling cues and modern design. And I'll point some of them out. So, as a very young kid, the car that I dreamed of more than anything was a C3 Stingray, because of the Coke bottle shape, right? And this car shares those lines, right? So this rear wheel arch, and it sticks right under the door and ends right here. And this one does the same thing. And you'll see that really prominent in the C3s as well. They say that this was designed after the C2 when they designed the body of this. But I definitely see way more of a C3 in it than a C2. And the rear end is something that was probably the biggest sore spot for me on the C5. It just looks so plain the longer I owned it. This is massively improved with the C6. I just think it has so many interesting like curves and lines, and it's just quite dynamic how they were able to modernize the rear end without changing it too much. Now, the biggest complaint you will hear on C4s through C6s is the interior. So let's take a look. Let's explore that. My car's kind of hard because the Centennial Edition offered a bit of an upgrade. So the Centennial Edition has suede on pretty much everything you touch frequently. So the shifter has suede, your glove box has suede, your steering wheel is suede, all your door handles have suede. And then your seats, these aren't stock, but the stock seats have suede inserts and special like embroidering on the headrest. And they look really cool, but they also have red stitching. And you can't really pick it up too great on camera. There you go. It has red stitching in a lot of spots in the steering wheel and on the cover, and kind of went with a theme, right? So this kind of like fancies it up a little bit, but for the most part, it's still plastic. It's still very much GM, right? Like it is a significant upgrade from the C5. The C5 is very squeaky. It's very like you touch anything and it makes this horrible like plastic grinding noise on everything. Like it sounds like you're jumping on a cheap leather sofa every time you get in it. That's the one major downside of a C5. If you can get over that, you have an amazing car for a really affordable price. But that's where this car really improves. Also, mine has the updated steering wheel, where the earlier models have the Cobalt one. And I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but different slightly. So it's a bit nicer to be in here than it is a C5, but for the most part, still a similar complaint. It's still just cheap. You can get the 4LT trim with the leather wrapped dash, but those are very well known to bubble and peel off, and it's a real pain to get that redone and have it stick. So I'm kind of glad mine doesn't have that, but I know it looks better. The C7 is where they really started to fix the interior complaints and made a really nice interior with great seats that are really supportive from the factory. And the C8, oh man, that is like, it doesn't even feel like a Corvette anymore. It's so nice. I can't believe it. But I digress. One thing I will add, I've learned to really love how analog this car is. Like for example, I got to drive a newer Audi TT. It was like a 2016, and obviously totally different platforms and everything. 4 years difference, but there's just so much tech in a car, in that car, right? And many cars of the same era where so much power is configurable, and you can change, your steering wheel feel and your brake pedal resistance and all these crazy things. And it's like, to me, this is such a great blend of analog feel and driving style with modern technology, like the traction control and the launch control and the stability control. It's a raw car when you want it to be, and it's a sophisticated car when you need it to be, which is really, really cool and not something you can buy new anywhere. I mean, maybe a BRZ, but that's a slow car. Not that this thing is a rocket ship by any standards, but this was kind of the big turning point for me to get a Grand Sport over the Z06, is the LS3 being the widely considered most reliable engine GM has ever made, or at least V8. Once I found out that and this might be new to a lot of you guys, if you get a Grand Sport as a coupe and a manual, you get a dry sump oiling system, holds 10.5 quarts of oil, and a hand-assembled LS3. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick up. Right under there, there is a build plaque. You can't see it. I'd have to take this off. There it is. And that is the master tech that assembled this engine. It's not going to focus, but pretty cool. So if you're in the market for a C6, something to be aware of. Let's see if you can refocus now. From what I've been able to gather, just browsing forums and interviews and things like that, is these also came with a forged steel crank using the same casting or similar casting as the LS9. I don't know. I've never taken one apart. I'm sure someone will correct me on that. But yeah, so this is kind of the big selling point for me. The Grand Sport, if you don't know, also has, the Z06 brakes, almost identical suspension. I think it has like a softer sway bar in the front or the rear. I can't remember exactly. And what else? Obviously the body lines. It weighs more than a Z06, about 150, 200 pounds more, because it has the steel chassis and fiberglass panels, whereas Z06 has aluminum chassis and carbon fiber hood and I believe front fenders as well. Other than that, that's all the same. What else? Okay, modifications. So I've done the seats. This car is actually on coilovers. This is my second set of coilovers now. I first had BC BR series, and they rode great. As far as these go, easy to install. I had issues with them falling apart after a couple of years of daily driving and a handful of canyon carving ventures. One of the front ones was starting to fall apart, so I decided to go with a different brand. So I'm on Neomax Silvers right now and have no complaints. They also ride really well. The seats and a lot of aesthetic stuff that I did when I bought it because the wheels were really curb rash. So these are powder coated, obviously, and I've got the ZR1 side skirts and front splitter. I've also done this like C7 style exhaust tip setup, so they're all four in a row rather than split up. And these are dirty. A lot of construction where I live, so picks up a lot of junk. And it's on muffler delete, so it sounds a bit loud. But as far as repairs, over the past 18 months, I haven't had to do anything major. When I bought it, it had been it had a few things it needed, like the wheels were curb rashed, the shocks were all leaking, which is why I went to coilovers. They were all the magnetic ride control stuff, and they were all leaking, and they're really expensive, so it was actually cheaper just to go coilovers. So I did that. And other than that, it's just been catching up on maintenance, changing all the fluids, and the only other major repair that I've had to do is the AC compressor. That was a real pain. So it's way down in there. Some cars are, easy because they're up here. Not this one. So this one, I had to lift the engine a few inches, pull the water pump out. I mean, when it's said and done, it wasn't that bad, but yeah, got her done. Let's do a little bit of a startup. Cars have a heads-up display. You can't see it because of all the crap in my garage. See if I can find a way to... There's no way you guys are going to see that. I'm sorry, but it's cool. I love it. Oh. So that's my car. Hope to have it for a really long time. Hope to really dig into the motor and put a cam in it and all sorts of fun stuff. So stay tuned.